Transitioning over, Col Jim Shelton is the commanding officer of Marine Corps Combat Service Support School. It's one of the most diverse schools within Training and Education Command. He has a spirit of innovation policy that he literally lives on a day-to-day basis because he hosts the Center for Adaptive Warfighting East. And through that, he's hosted the Executive Leaders Course, which Lieutenant Colonel Kirk Spangenberg was able to attend, as along with a plethora of other 06s across the Navy and Marine Corps. Sir, over to you.
Hey, good afternoon. Obviously, I'm in the wrong uniform of the day. I appreciate this opportunity. I'm going to approach it from a different perspective. I'm just going to kind of give it from how a commander sets the foundation for, or a director or a small unit leader sets the conditions for an agile organization. So these are my thoughts. I don't claim to be an expert on agile organizations, nor am I claiming to have a blueprint for everyone's respective organizations. However, I believe what I'm about to share can be applicable to any size organization and to any organization that have a variety of missions or functions. So how do you create an agile organization? You start with the people. What does an agile person look like? Are they young? I don't know. Many of my best are well into their middle age. Do they have advanced degrees? Many of my best have no degree and are self-teachers or self-learners. Do they have to have technical backgrounds? Most of mine are tradesmen. And do they have to be successful? Some of mine have experienced personal and professional setbacks. So I don't know that there's a boilerplate on what a person needs to look like. I will tell you this though, I do know that the most important part of a person who makes an organization agile is their sense of belonging and being made to feel like they can and do make a difference. They must be made to feel special. So how do you make people feel special? You invest in them. You give them your time, you give them your undivided attention, and you listen to them. You give them unfettered access to you, and you trust them. Of course, the way you arrive at trust is through all the time you spend with them and help them to understand your vision and direction. That time spent with them also allows you to learn their strengths and weaknesses. Once they understand your vision and direction, and you develop trust in them, and they develop trust in you, you can just get out of their way. If you get the people part correct, you will plant a seed for an agile and innovative organization. If you shortcut the people part, you will only have pockets of agility and not truly an agile organization. When you have the right people, give them something to do. Give them something meaningful, something significant, and well known as a challenge. In other words, don't give them pet projects. Give them something that requires effort outside their normal line of work. Do not allow them to stay in their comfort zone. Then make them apply their efforts outside their normal work hours. You can have the most intelligent person in the world, but if they aren't willing to put in extra time for the sake of agility, then they will not likely lead innovation and agility for your organization. Yes, this means scheduling time on the weekend. And as leaders, just giving somebody the task of doing something outside their normal work schedule also means you show up outside of that normal work schedule as well. As a commander, the result of providing the right people with the right training is an organization that may be the most agile in the DoD. To some, that sounds like boasting, but to others, it may be an understatement. So our results can be measured by either influence, accomplishment, change, speed of adaptation, member innovation, motivation, and or many other metrics. The way I measure agility is from the lens of the commander. Hang on just a sec, having a little bit of technical difficulty here. I just need to move. Yeah.
Sir, we still have you loud and clear.
Hang on. Okay. So the final piece back to the people is draw them from across the command and seek true diversity. Diversity in the truest sense of the word. Gender, rank, military, civilians, MOSs, successful and not so successful, and from various sections within the command. This simple effort will let innovation and agility spread like wildfire. Then teach them how to think in an agile way and then look out. Too often we have innovators placed in specific locations. We put them in the 3, we put them in a special cell. We don't actually allow that to manifest itself throughout the organization. You have to have the ability and the willingness to take the PFC, the Lance Corporal, the Master Gunnery Sergeant, the Major, the GS-14, the GS-5 that's been there for 20 years, and allow them to participate in this process. If you do that, then you've brought together the right people, and you brought the people together that will spread innovation and agility throughout the organization. So when you bring them together, what do? You teach them. So teaching someone to be an agile thinker is really more about stimulating their normal tendency to be agile thinkers. The training that has enabled our agile thinkers was the Warfighter Center design courses. The people who initially undertook this training did it on their own free time because they wanted to and because they saw value in the training. If the training had been forced upon a group, in my opinion, our efforts would not have been as impactful as it has been for us at MCC-SSS. As a commander, I look to the future. And if I have the right people and the right training, I look to the future and I try to anticipate friction. I try to anticipate change or the need for change. And I try to chart a path that enables success for the people and the organization. My awareness about future points of friction comes from listening, genuinely listening to my people. Of course, people sharing their thoughts of what an organization is doing wrong and what failures that will lead to is not unusual. Sometimes this is referred to as naysayers, because we have other words, obviously, that we use for those that are always finding fault with an organization. However, if you actually bring those folks into the training and enable them to feel as if they're important and they have a way to contribute, they actually might be your best agent for change and agility. The difference here is that the future friction points are presented and digested as potential sources of solutions, vice just being problems. In other words, you have, as a leader, as a commander, the responsibility to allow folks to participate in any problem-solving process that you have. The best way to have them participate is to actually teach them a common language or a common process that allows them to participate in a manner that is productive. So I think I have a pretty agile command here.
Go to the free chat.
Some amazing people who are capable of doing some amazing things.
Are they useless?
But I have to look back, and this is kind of where I get to be an honest broker as to whether or not all the training and the empowerment and the listening has really produced anything for MCC-SSS. So I'm going to give you a few examples, 4 examples. Those are post-Hurricane Florence recovery operations, surge planning and support, something as simple as the city bus underutilization, and what's hot on everybody's mind right now, COVID-19 response and improvisation. So everybody knows Hurricane Florence came along and affected Camp Johnson pretty significantly. We ended up with 10 days without power. We had roughly a little over 1,000 Marines, entry-level Marines that were here. We had very little supervision at the time. Because we had an organization that had been sort of empowered to think ahead, we were able to not only come through the hurricane properly, but we were able to come through and be postured to benefit from what is, or what was, a catastrophic situation. We had people already looking at how to improve motor team maintenance. We had people looking at how to already improve process flow and joint reception. We had folks, amazing medical folks, that were already participating in discussions about how to make a central medical, mental health, physical therapy location. So when the opportunity presented itself, because we already were thinking in an agile, innovative way, we were able to put together quickly a cohesive strategy or campaign or campus plan that went up through DCINL all the way to the elected leaders. And as such, this organization is set up for future success that'll last for probably generations. That's one example. So the other is surge planning and support. As everybody knows, the way the Marine Corps recruits is they recruit during June, July, August, and September, and that 54% of the recruiting population shows up at SOIs and then shows up at formal schools. And we weren't resourced or staffed to handle that. And in the past, what that led to was a huge MAC, Marines Awaiting Training population, stuck basically for anywhere from 2 to 6 months waiting to get in a class. That's not how these Marines wanted to join and see the world. It's not how the Marine Corps derived personnel readiness from that process. So because they were empowered, each one of the schools came up with solutions on how to move and adjust to actually create more capacity to address this MAP population. And compared to last year and the year before, or even the year before, we're significantly below where we were as far as a MAP population. And we didn't do anything. We didn't bring in extra people. We didn't bring in extra facilities. We didn't bring in extra resources. The people were empowered to look at the problem set differently and get after solving, and that's what came of it. So the third example is something as simple as the city bus underutilization. We have a city bus that comes through here from Jacksonville, the city of, and it is never used. Yet the Marines will sit here and pay an inordinate amount of money to pay for a cab, and it just wasn't making sense. The city was getting ready to cancel the line. The Marines were getting ready to have to pay more for cabs. So a group of folks that happened to have just gone through, or actually were part of the CAW, sat down, worked out a plan that actually developed optimization of the city bus, helped save money, helped serve the customer, and has been something that everyone else has sat and admired the problem, and because of an agile organization with innovative thinkers, we solved the problem. The final one is obviously fresh in everybody's mind, is COVID-19. So this is something, response and improvisation. We're all in uncertain times right now. Nobody's seen this. We didn't plan for it. We had a disease mitigation plan aboard the installation, but because we've got agile thinkers and innovative thought process, we have implemented things that are now the template for others to use within the training command pipeline to make sure that how you screen and medically assess, how do you isolate, how do you implement restriction of movement processes, how do you allow social distancing, how do you allow continuation of training. And it's not just in the training pipeline, but how do you also account for on-base liberty restrictions, and how do you keep these young men and women occupied socially while also maintaining social distance. That involves things involving MCCS, involves outdoor activities. And then finally, we also have folks that are experiencing a lot of angst associated with COVID-19, as is the rest of the population. So how do you present things to them or surge things to them to help them better understand and better deal with it? All of this is being done through collaboration, information sharing, use of some pretty rudimentary community collaboration tools, namely Swift. We're not a bunch of IT or tech guys and gals out here. We're just folks that are empowered to kind of get after stuff. So those are my examples. I genuinely believe that the people in this organization can solve almost any problem or challenge that comes our way. And it has nothing to do with me, except for the fact that I give up my time, I listen, and I challenge, and I enable. Those are my thoughts.
Sir, thank you very much for your thoughts, and an ode to something you mentioned earlier about trust. A man I think we all know of, General Mattis, said in his book, "Military operations move at the speed of trust." That's a quote I keep written on my notebook. So definitely agree with you on the answers lie with the Marines. First question we have, sir, is from a R Draw. Have you experienced any resistance using Agile and Scrum, vice the other processes that we have out there, .mil-pf, POM, McPP, etc.?
So when we had the initial executive leaders course, there were some discussions about, hey, this is really just McPP. We're not really, this isn't something that's different. We've been doing this for a while in the Marine Corps, MCDP1. I would agree. It's not the challenge here is, these products that we're enabling others to use are not aimed at an enemy. They're not necessarily, you're not going to get necessarily, hires intent from 2 levels up. So these products and processes are not designed to replace, normal processes, McPP, JOPS, those types. They're to allow an organization that has a product or has something that they actually produce to actually do it more effectively in a time, way, and shape that allows for collaboration.
Absolutely, sir. Next question, sir, from someone you probably know. Lieutenant Colonel Nicole Bohannon asked, totally agree with the cultural mindset. How do we implement this for entry-level students?
So we are sitting here in our S3 section. Major General Mullen has authorized us to do what is called experimentation. And we have a request for experimentation that's being worked on right now. It should be done hopefully by the end of the week, in which we will send it up there, and it will become part of our MAT curriculum. So no matter what MOS they are, where they come from, what their skill sets are, they'll be given the opportunity to participate or learn about the warfighter center design. Keeping in mind, though, this is a little bit of training that's forced upon somebody isn't necessarily going to give them the tools or the desire to be agile or innovative. So we're doing this just so we can get resources while at the same time enabling the continuity of this program. Does that answer your question?
If it doesn't answer your question, ma'am, you can just post another question and we can follow up. So to the continuity piece, one of the call members that's actually in the Air Force was asking, how do you plan to sustain this through turnover and secession, looking out 90, 120 days?
So, that's a great question. I think the folks here that are part of the call understand that they have the responsibility to select and then also train their replacements. So as we work through, as I talked about the surge period, which runs from November to April, we have focused primarily on training others outside of SSS. From April and through May or June, the focus will be training a cadre of personnel aboard Camp Johnson to be able to sustain the call. In addition to that, we've identified or are in the process of having one of our historic Munford Point buildings, M104, used to be the old theater, turn into our sort of CAW location in which it'll optimize training, at least on the eastern seaboard for the Marine Corps.
So a question for myself personally, as we got about 2 minutes left. How have you driven a command climate that enables the trust that you spoke about, that really empowers those Marines? Obviously, hosting CAW East is probably 90% of the answer. I'm looking for the 10% from a senior leader's perspective.
So, that's an interesting use of the word drive change. So it really is about enabling change. As a leader, the most important thing you do is you manage risk. You don't accept risk, you manage risk. So I think by my willingness to manage risk and allow risk to be, taken or chance taken down at the lower level, being able to provide some top cover to that is really how I think the climate has been set up for change. The other thing is that we're not the NFL. We don't get to draft who comes to Camp Johnson. We get some amazingly talented people, and we get some folks that this may not be the place they want to be. Either way, we find a way for having them fit into the team and contribute. And that's kind of how we set the climate up for an agile organization.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, sir. So that was Colonel Jim Shelton, Commanding Officer of Marine Corps Combat Service Support School.